sales is the most lucrative skill in the world, period. The problem is most sales advice out there today is outdated, cheesy, and can even keep you from getting the deals that can make all the difference in your career. This is the No BS Sales School, a podcast for entrepreneurs and salespeople who want to master the skill of selling without all the BS. Welcome to the No BS Sales School podcast. I'm your host, Walker McKay. Tried something different today. My friend Jeff Bajorek on the phone. He'll tell you who he is. We just started talking, having our pre-podcast interview, and we started having this kick-ass conversation. He said, "Hey, you dumbass, why don't we just press record and just finish the conversation so people can hear?" And I was like, you know what? You're right. We should definitely do that. Jeff, tell them who you are.
Don't put words in my mouth, Walker. I never called you a dumbass.
Well, you thought it, though.
No, I didn't. I love the, okay. So I told you before we pressed record that, my show, The Why and the Buy, that I do with Christy Walters, that I've done with her for 5 years, is finishing after 5 years. And we recorded our last episode actually just a few hours ago. And I remember when we started, and it was, okay, let's do the prep work. Let's do the pre-call. Let's get to know people first and all that stuff. And it's really, really important that you are prepared for your conversations in sales, in networking, all that stuff. Like I like to say that your prospect will only allow you to waste their time once, right? So don't use that if you don't have to. But I think back fondly, and I'm like, I remember when I started a podcast and we were trying to do all this stuff. Then we realized that the best stuff comes when you just show up and you are yourself, right? I like to say, You got to sell like you. So while I appreciate all the prep, I'm ready to rock at a moment's notice. And then when you started leaning in and you're like, hey, that's really good. And you started, to your credit, recognizing stuff that I was saying that I had not even mentioned before and asked questions no one had answered me before. I was like, this is gold that needs to be captured. So intro, my name's Jeff. I'm in sales. And what I like to say is that I challenge people to think, what's that feeling that you get when you made the biggest sale of your career? What's that feeling you got when you walked out with an order that you knew was going to change your career? Remember that feeling. I help people find that feeling more often. I help them believe that they can find that feeling more often. And then I show them how to get it, because I show them what's in their way. I show them what they're really good at. I help them identify some of their blind spots. And then I give them all the rocket fuel they need to do what they know they need to do, but are holding themselves back from doing it because I don't know if we can do it that way. The answer is yes, you can. You definitely should. And why haven't you started trying yet? So that's
Jeff, I think we need to give people a minute to wipe the drool off of their chins because they're like, holy shit, I want some more of that. Oh my God. Take a minute, because I got interested. You said you studied sports medicine.
I did.
In college, and immediately went into some kind of a clinical thing. Take about 2 minutes. Let's kind of talk through your journey of where you went through in medical sales.
Sure. So I was working at a hospital, and I knew that my time was coming to an end there. It was just something I'd lost the inspiration to work the particular job that I had. It was a great job, best job I could have ever asked for, but it was just time to grow.
How old were you?
I was 21 when I started. So I was 24 almost 25.
Okay.
And the woman that was sitting next to me at our desk, she said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know, Rose. I have like 3 months to figure it out. I have commitments that I have to honor here, but I had to give my resignation because I'm not going to come back and start another school season." And she said, "Why not sales?" And I said, "What do you mean, why not sales? Like, do you even know, like, we've been working together for the last 3.5 years and you're pegging me for a salesman?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I'm kind of beside myself, kind of just, stumbling over words." She said, "Look, I got you an interview. It's a good company. There's an open territory. It's local, and it's a brand that you and I have already worked with and trust. Take the interview. What else are you going to do?" I said, "Well, okay." Right. So I think of that as calculated risk number one. I'm going to be open to something that I was very, very closed off. And my family still struggles to recognize what I do for a living and to reconcile what I do for a living with what they think a salesperson is and who they know me to be. And they can't figure it out. Right.
Stop for a second. What is that thing that they know you to be that would make them not think you're a sales guy? Tell me more about that.
Look, it's my goal. If I was to sum up my purpose, right? What do I want to be known as when I leave this place? I want to be known as a quality human being. And I think I'm on my way there.
Yep.
Right? I'm generous. I'm thoughtful. I'm kind. I live to help others. I've always been a good problem solver. I'm a good hang, right? We're going to have a good time if we're out, having a drink and watching a ball game or something like that. Like
that's why we're having this podcast with no freaking prep, right? We're just rolling right into it. So because you are known as a good person, your family's like, there's no fucking way he's going to be a sales guy.
Yeah. Well, I thought you helped people, Jeff. I thought you got into medicine to help people. I was like, yeah, I did. And now here I am. And so calculated risk number one was, taking a look at the opportunity. Calculated risk number two was getting offered the job, telling the guy that hired me, I said, look, I'm not surprised you're offering. We wouldn't have gone through the interview process this far if you weren't ready to offer me a job. I said, but I still don't know why you're hiring me. And he said, look, I know you're a good person. I know you're a hard worker. You speak the language. So I got a job in orthopedic sales. He said, you speak the language. That's really important. It's hard to teach. He said, the business stuff, he's like, I can teach you that. That's not so hard to teach. He said, oh, and by the way, all the surgeons you've been working with or for the past 3.5 years, reporting to and the same team with,
your
the ones who will be your customers. And he's like, I asked them what I should do. And they unequivocally said, hire him. Even though it means that he doesn't work for us anymore. Hire him. He's going to be great for you. I said, okay. And to myself, I said, well, give it a year. If you hate it after a year, you're really good in clinical medicine. You have a place to return.
Yep.
And I made it 10.5 months. I was ready to go. And a mentor appeared, joined the organization, brought with him a couple lines actually of surgical implants. So I was out of just soft goods and bracing and into surgery now. And that's when I got real mentorship and appreciated what it was like, what it meant to actually sell and solve problems. I had a completely different outlook. And I went from someone who was really frustrated to someone saying, I get this selling thing now. I want to help people. I actually right away, within 6 months or so, I was like, I think I'd like to learn selling so well that I could teach it someday. And
so you already knew that you wanted to be a cheesy sales trainer from the beginning.
Well, actually, I thought about being a college professor rather than.
Did you really?
Yeah.
And that was the way you were going to teach people is as a college professor.
The academic.
Fascinating. Fascinating. So you and I were talking, and you made this switch to the new where you were selling this orthopedic. Explain this. You went from selling. This is pretty cool, like braces and stuff, to all of a sudden you said you were selling surgery.
Yes.
Tell me about that. Dig into that for a second. Explain that story. That was a good story.
So the implant that we had was really good, but it was just another implant. And if you look in the space, there are a lot of implants that look alike. And they each have these little idiosyncrasies. Like if you look in the X-rays of the patients, that are coming through, maybe they have, they need a total knee replacement. They already had the other one done. You look at the X-rays, you can tell which implant is which because there's always just a little thing. But for the most part, they all work really well as long as they're implanted properly. And the materials, they'll argue, we have the newest, latest, greatest.
We have the titanium, blah, 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 but whatever. Yeah, blah, blah.
The implants all work reasonably well. The differences between them are typically very minor, and particularly to the layperson, they're really minor.
Yep.
But what we had at the time was next level technology for how to implant them. Because the biggest issue with survivorship of an implant is not the materials, it's how it's implanted and how well aligned and functional it is.
Okay.
So we had with us the only, at the time, image-free, laser-guided, real-time navigation system. It was computer-guided, computer-aided surgery. And so we would bring this $250,000 machine into the room to help surgeons implant the devices better. And so our issue wasn't that we had a better implant. Our issue was that we had a serviceable implant. It was a top-notch. I don't want to sell the implant.
Yeah, it was as good or better than the rest.
As good as better as anybody else's. So which meant that it was the same as everybody else's.
Absolutely.
But we had this way of implanting. So what I got to talk about with surgeons, I didn't want to talk about our implant. You want to talk about the J curve and the radii of curvature and ultra high molecular weight polyethylene,
Who
and
gives
whether
a
it's
shit?
ram extruded or whatever. No, let's talk about how you're putting these things in and where we can help you, and where space age technology that isn't available with your current implant can help you get a better outcome for your patients. And help
But you had to teach them a different way to do surgery than they were already used to and comfortable. So it wasn't just switching. I mean, because like you said, an implant's an implant, but they had to go and actually do the surgery a different way. Right. So that's what you were selling.
Right. And I don't want to get into the gory details. But basically we took their first, basically the first step of the total knee surgery was X. And we said, so what do you do when you first get into surgery? And they said, well, we do X. And we said, why don't you do it this way? And they said, well, because it's faster in this. I said, okay, but look at when you do that, look at all the options you take off the table for the rest of your surgery. And they're like, oh my God, you're right. So instant credibility. Someone who's never operated on anybody, because I'm just a salesman. I trained, I've been in the labs, I've done all this stuff, but I don't have a medical license. I'm not allowed to do surgery. And I'm teaching someone in some cases, with 5-10 years of experience, cutting people open and putting them back together for a living, right? They're like, oh yeah, you're right. And what was even more inspiring was you get to that physician with 25 or 30 years experience who's like, this is the way I was taught. This is the right way to do surgery. We had instant credibility. We were telling a different story, and it was a damn good one. So it wasn't at all about the product was the outcome. The product was, would you like to do surgery this way? And they would say, yeah. They said, can I use my implant to do this? And we said, yeah, you can, but you can't use our CT free
laser guided
navigation system.
Yeah, right.
And they say, oh, well, let's talk about the implant then.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We didn't talk about the product until we'd sold them on a new way to do surgery. And that, I think, the way we approach that is, I think, the way modern selling is supposed to be approached. You've got to be, when you're prospecting, you've got to be someone worth talking to, and you have to have something worth talking about. And no one wants to hear about your product. They never cared about your product. They don't care about the product they're using right now.
Yeah. They don't give a shit. That's exactly right.
No, but what they want are better outcomes. They want more profitability. They want a different story to tell their customers so they can get more of them. They want to learn. They want to have their own knowledge challenged and their own understanding challenged. Some more than others. Some don't want to hear it at all.
Especially doctor group, but hell, you did it. So let's move on for a second, because you did this. You were extremely successful. You kicked ass at this. Mm-hmm. And then you said at 3.5 years in, mm-hmm. you told me something that really made my head spin around. You said, I kind of felt like I wasn't, what did you say? I wasn't growing, or I was stale. What did you say?
Well, I was dissatisfied with the job that I had working for the company that I had. And I think what it really came to was I learned enough on my own to learn or to know that I felt like there was something more. I felt like there were certain things holding me back. And all respect to the people at that company that I work for, that I'm still in touch with today, like it was no longer the right fit for me.
How much money were you making at the time, if you don't mind asking? You can give round numbers.
Not enough.
100,000, 200,000, 600,000?
Probably just under $100,000.
How much was your desire to move based on wanting to make more money versus growth, or is it all wrapped in the same?
It's all wrapped into the same thing. What I knew is I was working way harder than that salary or than those commissions were affording me. Right. So the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. That's what it was. And I got the right call from the right recruiter on the right day. And I took that opportunity to really, the biggest thing holding me back was focused. We had like 8 different lines that we were responsible for. And I do really well when I have 1 or maybe 2 things to focus on. So that was the biggest issue. And that, I think that lack of focus caused a lack of meaningful productivity on my end. And that's just me knowing myself now, 15 years later. And so when I took that job, I recognized that there were a lot of things that I wasn't doing. I was doing a lot of self-studying. I had a really great mentor. But I'd read something, or I'd come across something, and I'd say, this sounds right. This sounds good. I need to do this. I don't know if I can. I think our own momentum and inertia gets us so wrapped up sometimes that it's really tough to change course, even when a course change is the right thing to do. I like to say that hard. Habits become routines, become ruts, become canyons before too long. and
Yep.
you have to be able to have some flexibility, to move out of those ruts if you want to really grow. And so when I took this new job, I said, I have a fresh start. And I think fresh starts are invaluable to
Me
human
too.
beings.
Yep.
I have a fresh start. I'm going to go back to some of those things I've been stifling. I've been going go back to some of those things that I feel in my bones to be the right thing, but I didn't let myself do them.
An example of that. You're holding me back here. Tell me, what's an example of that? Reach back 16 years and tell me some of the things that you were stifling.
There was, I was running around putting myself in front of customers constantly, but I wasn't really selling. There was a lot of service work. There was a lot of, just putting your hands in people's faces, right? And hi, I'm here, and do it,
right,
and
dropping off donuts, visiting, saying hello,
and I'm looking around, and I see a lot of my colleagues kind of doing the same thing. There was this lack of understanding on my part of what actually made sales. Like I was doing everything that I saw other people do. I was mimicking other people, but I wasn't getting those results. I was really frustrated by that. And I remember reading this book, and I quote this book often. It's called How to Become a Rainmaker by Jeffrey J. Fox.
Great
Everybody
book.
I ever bring it up to says, oh yeah, I have that book. You probably bought it at a Staples like I did.
Yeah,
right? Like
I did. Some shit book, and I read it anyway. It was unbelievable.
And it's my kind of book. There's 2-page chapters, right?
Yes.
So I remember reading this thing. I don't know what chapter it was, but it says just all you have to do. There are 4 steps to the sales cycle. Get an introduction, get a meeting, have a meeting, close a deal. And I was like, that's it? That's not it. There's way more to it. Oh, Jeffrey J. Fox, you don't understand my business. My business is different. And so I said, I'm like, okay, that's cute. That's cute. I'll let you keep that. But it's stuck in the back of my head. And then when I started a new job, and I said, let me revisit that. And I modified. I don't use the same 4 that I said, I'm going to, every time I identify a prospect and I reach out to the office the first time, I'm going to give myself a point. And the whole thing was 1, 2, 3, 4 steps in the sales process. Every time you do one of those things, give yourself the corresponding amount of points, score 20 points in a week. You're going to have a healthy business. I'm like, that is so oversimplified. It can't possibly be true. And so I went back and I redid these, and I've talked about this. I've actually trained on this before, that I would give myself 1 point every time I reached out to a doctor's office for the very first time, or a purchasing agent at the hospital, whatever it was.
Yep.
Every time, but I only got that 1 point once.
First time.
Coming and dropping donuts every week or whatever, but not actually having a meeting. That's not selling, folks. I got to tell you, it's not selling.
We should charge ourselves points for doing that dumb shit.
Well, yeah, it was bad enough that you don't get any, right? But I recognized that there was, it may take more than one attempt, right? So
Yep.
You have to recognize what you're really getting compensated for, and scoring points came from scheduling meetings.
Yep.
And then once I had a meaningful exchange, whether it was in person or not, that was the 3rd step. It wasn't just about having the meeting. And then the 4th step wasn't necessarily closing the deal. It was advancing the process and getting a commitment for the next step.
Yep.
And where I made it tough for myself was, it wasn't, okay, I'm going to have a meeting. That's 3 points. I'm going to get the next step. That's 4 points. So I got 7 points for that interaction. No, it was either 3 points or 4 points. There are no 7-point meetings. And I said, I'm going to, 20 points. That's cute. I'm going to go for 25 because I'm an achiever. And when I had those guardrails in place, and I said, it doesn't matter how many customers I see. It doesn't matter how much time I spend on the road. It doesn't matter how many miles I drive. I'm going to score 25 points every week. I went from working 60 to 65 hours a week and scoring on average about 8 points, because I got to look back at my old calendar, to scoring 28 to 33 points a week in about 20 hours. And I tripled my revenue. So I want you to think about that. That is a decrease in effort in terms of hours expended by 3 times. And that is an increase in revenue by 3 times. That's a 9x return on investment.
Yeah.
In 15 to 18 months. I don't remember the exact timeline. It was less than a year and a half. And
were you giggling and pinching yourself going, what the fuck am I missing here? I mean, this is unbelievable. I'm doing all this stuff.
Yeah. And you know, what's interesting is how many people I talk to about it, and they're like, yeah, I don't know. Like,
that wouldn't work. Yeah, that wouldn't work.
And so that was, so I don't need to get too in depth in the system, but and we can at another time, but
Yeah.
that was the first thing. I was like, this intuitively makes sense, but I'm immediately shutting it out. And so I wonder, what else am I shutting out? What else am I doing because of some superstition that I was taught a long time ago, or some habit that I learned because, I didn't know any better? What are those things that are holding me back? And so I immediately had a much more open mind to training, to guidance, to what I was reading, to who I was listening to, and all that. And I think it opened up my horizons quite a bit.
You mentioned something about mentors, and I don't know anybody that doesn't wish they had a great mentor. Mm-hmm. Did your mentor, was it something active that you searched out, or they just show up in your life like an angel?
He was, he appeared in front of me. I remember where I was. I was at the Bowers Harbor Inn in just north of Traverse City, Michigan. We were there for the Michigan Orthopedic Society conference, and he showed up and was introduced to the team that day. That's where it was. And
did you go hug on his leg? How did he pick you up? Did he mentor everybody, or did you y'all just hit it off?
Well, so it was really interesting was, we had this other line that was and basically, here's this new product. He's new to town. The product is new to the country, right? This was, a very well-established product overseas, and we were bringing to the United States. And I had this really well-renowned, really top-of-the-line premium brand that I was representing at the time. And so, we exchanged pleasantries that day. We agreed to talk at another time. And, during one of those conversations, he says, Jeff, here's the thing. I've been doing this for 19 years. I know how to sell. He says, and I got a great product. He says, what I don't have is access. I can't get in front of people because they don't know who I am. He said, now you, on the other hand, don't know the first thing about selling. I know you're trying. I know you've been in the field for 11 months. And he's like, but here's the thing. You don't know how to sell, but you can get in front of people. He's like, so if you're willing to let me ride with you once every couple of weeks or so, it's like, let's go figure this out. Let's go make some sales. And so once every couple of weeks turned into once a week, turned into 3 times a week, turned into, hey, where are we going? And when are we going? And, I think the beauty of it was he had done this before, and he took me under his wing, so to speak, and said, we would travel together, and I would let him take over the calls. I would introduce him, and then he would run the call. And then little by little, as we'd start to revisit the same people, or even new people, he'd say, okay, you take this one. And there was this gradual kind of development. And not only did we sell together in real time, but there would be those days, all right, we're going to sell from 7:30 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon. And then we're going to go grab a beer or a cup of coffee or whatever it was. And let's talk about what happened. And let's talk about what didn't happen. And let's talk about what needs to happen next. And let's talk about what you can do before I come back into town, because he lived about an hour away. So before I come back into town, before we do this next thing, I need you to do this because you're my man on the street, right? You're my feet on the ground.
Sounds, and then maybe we're just parsing words here, but he sounds more like a coach than a mentor. I mean, obviously he was a mentor to you because he was older, but that he was getting into such detail, and that's freaking spectacular.
Well, I believe there's a big role in mentorship for coaching. I don't believe that you can mentor without coaching. Okay. You can coach without mentoring, but I don't believe you can mentor without coaching. And so I believe it was all wrapped up together, right? So I'm learning. He was training me in that way, but the mentorship came from giving me the why behind the what, and also taking it beyond the X's and O's on the sales floor, so to speak, and saying, and really helping me understand if this is what I wanted to do for a living, and helping me understand how to balance this young family that I had on one hand with the demands of a job that requires that, in orthopedics. Look, there are no consulting emergencies, but in orthopedics, if your instrument trays weren't there yesterday, you could lose a surgery, which meant money.
Let me back you up for a second. You said he taught you the why behind the what.
Yep.
Explain that for a second.
Well, there's, I need you to go get in front of this person, or I need you to drop this off. And then here's the bigger picture. This is why we want to make this move at this point. There was a strategy behind the tactic. It wasn't just a list of go do this
or busy
stuff.
work. Right. Yeah. Right? So helping you, I mean, literally mentoring you to go. So what I also heard you say, or was obvious in your relationship, was that many people are looking for a mentor. And I think they look at it as somebody who can give me stuff, can give me knowledge, can help make this easier. But I think what you showed was that you also were of value to him.
I found this out maybe a year or so ago. Because we parted ways, and I'll tell you what kind of a mentor he was. After being with him about 2.5 years and deciding I needed to go elsewhere, he wrote a letter of recommendation for me to leave.
Wow.
So there's that. But what was really interesting is our paths have stayed intertwined. He's still a good friend. I refuse to mention his name because he refused to come on my podcast. So if you ever hear me refer to he who shall remain nameless, that's who I'm talking about.
Give me his phone number. I'll call him, get him on my podcast.
But our paths have crossed a couple of times, and there was a company he worked for that I was brought in to do some work. And we were at one of those events one time, and he said, Jeff, I never told you this, but when you were greener than green and I knew we were working together, he's like, I had to be on my toes all the time because I had to anticipate what you were going to ask, and I knew you were going to ask me why. So I had to do my own homework. He's like, make no mistake, me working with you made you better. You working with me made me better. Mm-hmm. And here's at the time he had 20 years experience, had run states, the operations in states that you've heard of for companies you've heard of. And he's like, having to be ready for you made me better. So
I think one of the things that you did, I don't mean interrupt you again, but one of the things that you have done a couple of times in these conversations is he just said, you asked me, I knew if I told you something, you would ask me why, right? Mm-hmm. So there was an innate curiosity in you, which I think is absolutely crucial for top salespeople, is to be sincerely curious and to understand the why and to be able to ask why to people who are your prospects and the people that are around you so you can understand better. And I think is that something you've always been? Were you one of those kids?
Yeah. I don't know if I was annoyingly one of those kids, but
of course not.
I grew up in I'm not saying that I wasn't an annoying kid, just not in that regard. I grew up in a family where everything was, why'd you do it that way? And it's this chippy big brother / uncle / dad / whatever way of, and it annoys my wife to this day.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You guys always picking on each other. I'm like, yeah, but we picked on each other in a way that made us better. We understand how things work, right? And so I've got a very engineering type, analytical type mindset.
Can tell that, yes.
And so I want to know why stuff works, because let's look at this. Let's look at it: cold calling versus social media or whatever. This tired argument. Like, don't tell me cold calling doesn't work, because I know people who cold call. And
right.
Don't tell me that social media doesn't work, because I know people who use social media and it works. What's the common theme here? You got to get the attention of people that you don't have the attention of. You figure it out. Potato. I don't care. But what are we trying to do? So, Jeff, I want you to call this person. Okay, what are we trying to accomplish here? Right? The difference between tell me what to do and what are we trying to accomplish is so profound. The mindset shift there is so profound. And so if I want to know what we're trying to accomplish, so I can figure out the way I can do it the most effectively. And it's a key thesis of, what I'm working on right now is you can't find, there are no silver bullets. We know that, but stop looking for a how-to guide. Start paying attention to your own intuition and sell like you. Take inspiration from the people who've gone before you, the people who've been successful, the mentors that you will hopefully exceed in success one day, because that's what they want to see for you too. What needs to be done? Do it your way. When you do it your way, you're going to be more comfortable. You're going to be more effective. You're going to be more likely to do it. You're going to be more successful. That looks like exponential growth. You sell like you because no one else can. And that's how you make customers for life. You can follow a guidebook, a how-to manual that someone like myself can publish for you.
Yep.
Right? And you'll have moderate success because you'll hit all the steps. But what's key is that you hit all the steps, not how you hit them.
Yep.
Right? Walker, I can't sell like you. You can't sell like me.
Yep. Don't want it. Neither of us should try.
No.
Yep.
No. So the fact that you have all these young salespeople out there, you have old salespepeople who are like, oh, just tell me what to say. Can you give me, can I write that down? No, you can't write it down.
Stop writing.
No, hold on. Can we record this? No. I want you to think about what you remember about what I just said, and I want you to put it in your own words.
Love that.
And that is, I think, what people are missing, and that people are afraid to go there because they don't want to screw up. So, Walker, you give me a how-to guide, and I follow all those steps, and I win. It's my success. If I fail, it's your fault.
Right.
You told me. It's plausible deniability. I just, and think about that from you. If you're listening to this as a salesperson, are you so afraid to fail that you're willing to try someone else's techniques at the behest of your own success? And let's also think about it from the buyer standpoint. The last thing a buyer says before they press go on that PO is, will I get fired for this? Mm-hmm. And if there's a threat that they're going to get fired for this, guess who wins? No decision wins, right? Yep. I'd rather not make a decision. I see this in the companies that I consult for. Oh, we got to make a decision. Yeah, I don't. Shiny object. There's a project to work over there. There's a fire I got to put out. I'm going to press pause.
Put this off. Yep.
There's too much at stake. I can't get myself to do it. Mm-hmm. So that what mentorship does, I think real good mentorship does, is helps you understand the why behind things, the fundamentals and principles that are at work. And you can modify your technique. Like if you know that prospecting needs to be done, whether it's with a phone, a computer, smoke signal, carrier pigeon, whatever it is, you'll figure out the way to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. But if you're like, I live by the phone, I die by the phone, you know what? There are going to be people that you reach, and there will be a lot that you can't.
Yes.
Okay. Same thing goes for every other tactic. What's the strategy behind it? And to your point, I want to go back to the mentee, right? You have to be curious, and you cannot be curious unless you are willing to be wrong.
Be proven wrong. Right.
Not be truly, fundamentally curious unless you were willing at some point to admit that what you assumed was not correct. Curiosity is the testing of assumptions. And if you're dead set on you being 100% correct all the time, you're not curious. And that's okay, but that's going to limit your knowledge. It's going to limit your growth. It's going to limit your success.
Jeff, you have spoken a mouthful, and you've shared with this audience, and I'm over here ready to buy whatever the hell it is you're selling. And Jeff, where could people find you? Where could they find you if they want to know more?
You can find me at jeffbajorek.com. You can Google my name. I'm all over the place. But you can interact with me. The best place to interact with me is at rethinkthewayyouSell.com. That's a community online that I'm putting together. It's been growing for the last couple of years. It's really fun. It's kind of a tight-knit group, and it's a place where we can connect over the content. It's not.
Is this something you and Jordana are working on?
No, Jordana's been a part of it, and she hangs out every once in a while. But Jordana Zeldin introduced the two of us. She's a wonderful human being and a great sales coach and consultant.
She is.
But then what Jordana and I have worked on, she's been a contributor to my Deeper Thought podcast, which is kind of the next step for me. Cool. So that's you can find that at jeffbajorek.com/deeper thought.
And by the way, it's Jeff, JEFFBAJOREK, for those of you that don't have a lot of Bajoreks in your life. No BS Sales Team, thank you for listening today. Please, if you know somebody else needs to hear this episode, they need to have their eyes open, their ears open. They need to understand a little bit better what you just learned today. Please share this. And if you have not yet signed up, if you've not yet subscribed to this podcast, please do so. Give me 5 stars if you like it. That helps us grow the ratings. We're already growing tremendously. I appreciate you very much. Jeff, thank you so much for being a part of the show. This was really fun. I love the fact that we did it kind of off the cuff. That's cool. Appreciate you very much.
And thank you for your tolerance of that. It's kind of just, hey, impromptu, let's sit down and do this. But I want to say something really quickly. If you're still listening right now, what Walker's talking about with the reviews is no joke. Like, if you like this, if you've learned anything that's going to help you make $1, please tap on the 5th star. Like the way podcasts are sorted and put in front of people, like when you go to let me find a podcast that I might like the algorithms for podcasts are very similar to that of social media. It's going to put stuff in front of you that you like. And this helps. If you give him a review, it helps this podcast get in front of more people, which helps you get a better podcast. That's how it works. Don't take that for granted like so many people do. Just give him a good review.
You're the man, Jeff. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Talk to you again soon.